Imagine if you had a nightmare. And it came true. Or that you drew a perfect picture of something you'd never seen. Or could cure the sick just by looking at a photograph. Would you be losing your mind? Or have you found a strange, new way to the truth? It's time to shine a light on the psychic mind with Truth or Scare. You know what I'm thinking? Well then, maybe, just maybe you're psychic. You wouldn't be the first person to make that claim. But is it all just a bunch of talk? Do we really have that sixth sense? That's the question that science is trying to answer. Sometimes it starts with a nightmare. Back in the fall of 1985, a woman had a terrible dream. The scariest part was that it seemed so real. Too real. But it was only a dream.
Honey, it's just a dream.
So she went back to sleep, safe in her husband's arms. But then, 2 weeks later, her husband's friend invited him to go on a hunting trip. The woman felt a chill deep in her bones. Her husband rarely went hunting. Was this more than a coincidence? With her nightmare flashing through her mind, she begged him to stay. When he asked her why, she was too embarrassed to admit that it's a dream. But then, how did she know? The hunter died in the woods that day. His wife's nightmare had become reality. Was it actually a vision of the future? Ask any skeptic, and they'll tell you it was a bizarre, tragic coincidence. That extrasensory perception is a figment of our imagination. But ask anyone on the street, most people admit they believe. At least a little. And even some scientists are convinced that ESP is real. Now, psychic investigator Dr. William Roll is looking for a way to prove it.
Up until the present, parapsychologists have been focused on proving that psychic phenomena occur. Now it's changing, and we are convinced that the phenomena are real, and the question now is, how do they happen?
Dr. Roll has investigated hundreds of cases. From the evidence, he's identified 2 different types of ESP. One is when people see into the future, like the woman's dream. The other is when people see events from the past, things they never experienced themselves and couldn't know about. That's what happened to college professor Dr. Peter Nelson. When he was on vacation in Edinburgh, Scotland, he claims he had a psychic vision, one he'll never forget.
So I entered this building at this address, and as I opened the door and walked in, I had an intense feeling of a kind of a shock wave. And I saw very clearly, visually, in my mind's eye, a man in workman's overalls falling from the top of the stairwell down through the stairwell. I knew instantly, as I saw that he had died in the bottom of the stairwell.
Yes.
And as I said, I'd never been to this building before. And it was a very clear inner eidetic image that I could see what he looked like. I could almost feel the moment of panic as he came off the scaffold.
Dr. Nelson asked his friends if a workman had died there. Their shocking answer? 2 years before, a painter had fallen from the skylight. By carefully questioning people like Dr. Nelson, Dr. Roll is developing his theory on where ESP comes from.
People who are psychic, or people who are more psychic than the rest of us, very often have had a stressful childhood. And the sort of heightened sensitivity seems to be because these people have their antennas out for pain, essentially.
Dr. Nelson knows the future will bring him many more glimpses of someone else's painful past. But he has no idea when the next psychic vision will strike. Is there any truth to this woman's amazing claim? Can she actually help cure the sick with her psychic powers? Find out when Truth or Scare continues.
So far, we've met people who say they only have random access to their psychic powers. A dream of the future, a glimpse of the past, always without warning. But there are some who can summon their psychic gifts at will. At least, that's what they claim.
Joan Windsor tries to help the sick using her mysterious abilities. Instead of medical training, she uses psychic power. Sick people from all over the world write to her for help. She professes to have the power of clairvoyance, the ability to solve mysteries with any of the facts. Out of desperation, these people have turned to her, hoping that she can diagnose their mysterious illnesses and figure out a treatment. Maybe even a cure.
I'm able to pick up the photograph, and I think that it has vibrations because I think everybody has a unique vibration. So if I can hold on to the photograph, I tune into that person.
The woman in this picture can't digest food without feeling intense pain. Her doctor had given her test after test, but the cause of her problem remains a mystery. Can Joan Windsor possibly see what all those medical tests missed?
This is an intuitive evaluation for Joyce White.
Joan's psychic vision was one of the woman's spine getting weaker and weaker. It turns out that when the woman was a child, she'd hurt herself while ice skating. Joan believes that injury is causing the woman's unbearable pain. Is this all too much to be believed? Well, Joan claims that doctors had confirmed 70% of her diagnoses. And, in this case, her clairvoyant diagnosis was picture perfect. And there are more than just a few believers in Second Sight. When Joe McMoneagle was a young man, he had a frightening near-death experience. Ever since, he says he has felt psychic powers. Back in the 1970s, the Central Intelligence Agency created the Stargate program. Joe and more than 20 others were hired to be psychic spies. Joe got right to work. From one of his visions, he diagrammed a new Russian submarine before it was even. Then he told the government where to look for it. About 4 months later, a satellite spotted the sub. It was just where Joe had said it would be.
The way the information comes generally is in bits and pieces or fragments. It's sort of like getting parts or portions of a picture, not all simultaneously, but in bits and pieces.
Was it just luck? To put Joe's psychic powers to the test, the CIA sent an agent to a secret location. Joe was asked to find him. He drew pictures of windmills 100 miles from San Francisco, in exactly the area where the agent was standing. Joe was successful in his assignments, but those who don't believe in psychic powers like to point out that he was the only one. Overall, the psychic predictions in the Stargate program were about the same as if a person had guessed, but the believers are not discouraged. At the world-famous Rhine Institute in Durham, North Carolina, psychic research is being conducted every day. Researchers use something called remote viewing to test the mysterious phenomenon called mental telepathy. The remote viewing test requires two people, a sender and a receiver. A computer selects some photographs at random. The sender looks at them and concentrates on each image. Here, she's looking at a campsite in the middle of the woods. In another room, the receiver tries to picture what the sender is seeing.
I'd like you to look through Maggie's eyes and describe what you see.
The receiver concentrates, then draws the first images that appear in her mind.
A square?
Dr. James Broughton is the director of the Rhine Institute. If you ask him, we all have psychic potential. The question is, can we develop it?
I think psychic is precisely that. It's an ability, a human ability, nothing magical about it, and it's going to be there. Whether somebody believes it or not may control how much they deploy it, very much along the way that somebody may think they just have no musical ability, and every time they pick up an instrument, it kind of sounds lousy. Do they not believe in music, or do they just not have any faith in their own ability to deploy it?
Through something flat, through the tree trunks.
The experiment continues. The sender concentrates on other photographs. The receiver makes more drawings. Afterwards, Dr. Broughton compares the drawings to the photographs. Are the sender and receiver psychically connected? The answer is a definite maybe. The receiver picked up the campsite photo exactly, but her other drawings were a lot sketchier.
This trial, well, sort of in the middle, I guess. Neither a success or a failure. Successes are good. We have quite a few direct hits, which are, real nice to have, but we learn as much from the failures, the ones that aren't quite right, because we're trying to understand the process here.
Can humans sense when someone's watching them? Science sets out to try and prove it. When Truth or Scare returns.
Question. Have you ever had the feeling that someone is watching you?
It's a feeling we've all experienced. You're sitting there, minding your own business, and then you feel a chill. That unmistakable sense that someone is watching you. I mean, just think of how many times you have had that very same feeling. But when you turn, there's no one there.
The experiment is concerned with the remote detection of staring.
Dr. Richard Weissman is a professor at the University of Hertfordshire in England. He's not convinced that the feeling of being watched is a psychic one. So, he's conducting an experiment to see how well it is. The subject is monitored by a machine that works like a lie detector. His physical reactions are recorded to see if he can actually feel it when someone is watching him. For 20 minutes, Dr. Weissman will randomly stare at the subject's image. If the subject senses he's being watched, the monitors will detect the changes in his vital signs.
I think this experiment's interesting for a number of reasons. People come into it expecting it to be successful. They've had the experience of being stared at, turning around, seeing somebody looking at them. It's an everyday phenomena. And so they come in thinking that, yes, there might be something psychic going on here. And what I hope is that we actually find some strong evidence for psychic ability.
Unfortunately, this session was a failure. In fact, most of his remote viewing sessions are. Back in the United States, remote viewing tests like this are more successful, but those tests are usually by believers. Professor Weissman's research has shown that those tests are interpreted more favorably than ones given by more skeptical scientists like him. So, what is needed is an ESP test that can't be influenced by the personal opinions of the researchers. At the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, they believe they've developed that test. The university is one of the few in the world with a program in parapsychology, the study of psychic phenomena. Dr. Robert Morris runs that program, though most psychologists would probably not agree. He believes that the study of ESP is just as important as psychology itself.
We've been improving our techniques all along, partly because we've had access to more sophisticated procedures. The problems we have are problems shared by psychology, biology, and various other areas. So they've been developing new techniques as well. The computer has been very helpful.
That's because, like humans, process lots of information. But unlike people, they don't have opinions. They're the ultimate impartial scientists. And with them conducting the test, can the skeptics question the results? Could a boy's nightmare be the key to saving his family from tragedy? Next on Truth or Scare.
The testing of human psychic abilities has finally entered the computer age. Now, it's up to a man-made brain to help determine the capacity of human psychic power.
And what we'll do next is go ahead and put on the eye shields. And I like to go ahead and start on your left-hand side. If you go ahead and close your eyes.
Welcome to the most advanced experiment ever devised to test psychic powers. First thing you need to do,
The next one.
cut a ping pong ball in half.
Go ahead and put those on.
Here at the University of Edinburgh, Simon is being given an Otto Gunsfeld test to see if he can read
Now I'll
minds.
fade down the white lights.
He'll be placed in a sensory deprivation chamber. The ping pong balls block out everything but light. The headphones remove all outside sounds. It's total isolation. Simon is the receiver in this experiment. In is the sender. A computer randomly chooses a video to show her. As she concentrates on that image, Simon will describe what he sees and feels.
Feeling tension in my chest, my heart rate's going up. It's kind of sensation of claustrophobia and anxiety. Kind of almost fear, but not quite. Image of space, people floating in space. Sensation of water.
Okay, Simon, what we're going to do now is do the judging sequence. On the screen in front of you will come up your 4 possible choices.
Now, Simon looks at a series of images. He picks out any that he feels relate to what he saw in his mind's eye. How?
Okay, so you saw Simon's ratings, and so what he picked up as his first choice. So tell us, what was the target?
Sea diving!
What Simon said was exactly right. And, so far, more than half the Otto Gunsfeld tests in Scotland have been successful. Results like that are more than just luck. It still doesn't prove conclusively that ESP exists, but it's made it a lot harder for non-believers to turn a blind eye. Still, the most amazing examples of psychic power aren't found in the lab. They're found right outside the front door. Like in the summer of 1993. That's when Perry Gamboa, an 11-year-old boy in California, had a dream that changed his life. He was taking a walk with his grandmother, his brother, and baby sister. He saw a smiling old woman. There was something strange about her. Then, suddenly, a van came flying down the street, out of control. Perry just watched, helpless, unable to move. But it was only a dream. Perry still remembered it a few weeks later. It's a good thing that he did, because that's when Perry did go for a walk with his family. And just like in his dream, he looked up to see that strange old woman. But this time, she was real. So when a van came flying around the corner, Perry knew what was about to happen. And because he did, his family's lives were saved. It's only one story. But when you add all of them up, possibilities are mind-boggling. Is the future happening now? Just like those glimpses of the past that some people can see happening around us today? And if we can truly see into the future, is it actually possible to change it?
So many questions with answers that might make some people a little uneasy. It can be terrifying to confront the unknown psychic potential of the human mind. Fortunately, science continues to search for that proof of potential. Imagine what we might do: read someone else's thoughts, save lives, and maybe even see a picture of the future.